Hello, join me on the adventure and welcome to the Mysterious Adventures Podcast. I am your host, Paladino Joey, or Joey Awajan. Mysterious Adventures is available on all of your favorite podcasting apps, and I thank each and every one of you once and always for downloading and listening to the show. It is a great pleasure to be back on board with you once again today, as, well, we're going to dive deep into something that I've wanted to get into for a while. Of course, it's not the most pleasant topic in the world, that's for darn sure. And yes, it happens to be Halloween week, Halloween time, and all that. I'm not a huge supporter of Halloween. I don't celebrate Halloween the way people do. But, I mean, I like the festive side of it, and, of course, the Castlevania side of it. You could say the Castlevania games over the years for the Nintendo and all the way up to the PlayStation 1, anyway, with Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which has some of the best music ever, basically, on the PS1, dating all the way back to 1997. But, really, the topic of today's show is Dracula himself, the real Dracula. The real Dracula. Vlad the Impaler. Vlad Tepes. Yes, indeed. Well, a very vast topic on a single person, Vlad the Third, Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Tepes. Well, let's start from the beginning. Who knows? I may do like part 2, part 3 someday, maybe in the future, where I maybe continue into other sides of the story. But, well, the real one did not turn into bats. The real one does not return every 100 years. Most of that's obviously just legend and parts of video games or just other legend, folklore, and such. Well, man, it's like, where do we even begin with this one? His official birth, I'm almost confused looking at it. But 1428 was when Vlad was born, Tepes, and apparently died in either 1476 or 1477. So a little confusing, unfortunately, at times, as to when he actually lived and died. So yes, yep. So between 1428 and 1431, and perished in 1476 and or 77. He lived anywhere from 44 to 49 years, and well, so it's kind of all over the place. Spouse, the unknown first wife. It's like maybe Lisa, right? Like in the Castlevania series, but apparently Justina. Interesting there. I deeply apologize for the strange background noise. That kind of came out of nowhere, so my apologies there. Apparently, Vlad Tepes' father was Vlad II of Wallachia. Mother, Eupraxa of Moldavia, ? Interesting. Religion, Roman Catholic. There's even a signature. Yep, they even have a signature, so pretty fascinating stuff. Lots of information on this man. Apparently his first reign started in October, imagine that, in October through November 1448. His predecessor was Vladislav II. Successor was Vladislav II. Second reign, August 20th, 1456 to July 1462. Predecessor, Vladislav II. What the heck is going on here? Successor, okay, that's predecessor. Successor, Radu III. Third reign of Mr. Vlad, or Dracula, June 1475 through December 1476 or January 1777, or 1477, pardon me, that was around his death, apparently. Basarab III was his successor, him being, of course, we all know, Vlad III. Again, man, where do we go with all this? There's so many things to talk about. Vlad III, commonly known as Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Tepes, was Voivode of Wallachia 3 times between, like I said, and then his death later on. He was regarded as a hero in Romania due to his opposition to the Ottoman Empire, that would be Turkey, and he is considered an important ruler in Wallachian history. So, in a lot of ways he was a crusader, but not necessarily a good one, we'll say, because it was kind of like Christian versus Muslim type thing. Vlad was the second son of Vlad Dracula. That's where the word Dracula comes from. Dracula, Dracul. All you need to do is add an A, and it's Dracula. But he became the real one. It's just interesting. Dracula became the ruler of Wallachia in 1476. Vlad and his younger brother Radu were held as hostages in the Ottoman Empire in 1442 to secure their father's loyalty. Interesting. Vlad's eldest brother Mircea and their father were murdered after John, God, these names are insane, John Zizi Hunyadi, recent governor of Hungary, invaded Wallachia in 1447. Hunyadi installed Vlad's second cousin, Vladislav II, as the new voivode. Hunyadi launched a military campaign against the Ottomans in the autumn. Oh, tongue twister, isn't it? 1448, and Vladislav accompanied him. Vlad broke into Wallachia with Ottoman support. What the heck? So they were friends and enemies and friends. Weird. And support of October, but Vladislav returned and Vlad sought refuge in the Ottoman Empire before the end of the year. Vlad went to Moldavia in 1449 or 1450 and later to Hungary. All kinds of stuff. So, but that's not necessarily what we're here for. Okay, obviously there's history and there's a lot of back and forth. Sounds like a hockey coach in the 1960s. He was the coach, then he got fired, then he came back, then he got fired again, then he came back again, and then and then he came back in the middle of the year, and then he left, and then he came back, and then hockey coaches in the 60s. That sounds like about right. I can imagine there have been some Vladislavs and Vladimirs in the National Hockey League, so might as well head in that direction. there have been some Vlads. But usually those are Russians, not from Romania. The picture in the title of this episode is from Ambras Castle, portrait of Vlad III, 1560. Wow, so he was still living when this painting was done. And you could tell it's kind of a 1500s-ish looking art and all of that. So had the long hair, the mustache. I think the little goatee as well, which is what you often see in Dracula. You see that short goatee coming down. If I can see that correctly, maybe not, but maybe that was added in some of the Castlevanias and such. Definitely a nice piece of art, and so we'll get to some of the way Vlad ruled his area. So Vlad the Impaler ruled the 15th century Wallachia with an exceptionally harsh and public legal code, using brutal punishments, most famously impalement. That's where impalement came from. To enforce a zero-tolerance policy for crimes ranging from theft and corruption to adultery and disrespect. So as much as maybe stealing an apple, you could get impaled. That's why there was basically zero crime in that area. So Vlad's goal was to consolidate power by eliminating enemies and creating a degree of order through terror. Crazy. So more of the strict laws. Impunity for theft. Vlad's severity for theft was legendary. One story recounts that he placed a golden chalice. Wow, that sounds like like a treasure in what was the game called for? I can't remember the name of it now. For the Atari 2600, the Golden Chalice. It would be a treasure you'd get if you had the highest score or whatever. But he placed the Golden Chalice by a fountain in the town center and left it untouched, as people were too terrified of the punishment for stealing it. In a separate instance, Vlad impaled a thief and set up a second stake for a merchant who had been overcompensated with an extra ducat. The merchant avoided death only by returning the extra coin. Lord, he just happened to get an extra coin from somebody, maybe the person overpaid. He could have been impaled for it. Think about it. That's insane. So who was worse, the guy who turned into bats in the Castlevania story, or maybe this one? Well, we'll dig a little deeper pretty soon here. Punishment for corruption. Vlad used brutal public executions to terrorize the boyars or nobles whom he viewed as treacherous and corrupt. In 1457, Vlad reportedly invited hundreds of boyars to a feast and then had them impaled or sentenced them to forced labor to rebuild a castle. Jiminy Christmas. Interesting. But wouldn't we all like to do that sometimes? Especially to corrupt people, to corrupt politicians. Wouldn't we want to, maybe not impale them, but maybe force them to rebuild a castle or something? Yeah, or something more modern, I suppose. Enforcement of morality. Vlad's code punished not just crime, but also perceived moral failings. He implemented severe, often gruesome punishments for adultery, and he was known to punish women who lost their virginity before marriage. Elimination of the burdensome. According to some accounts, Vlad took extreme measures against the poor, sick, and disabled, who he deemed unproductive. Well, there's a lot of unproductive people in a lot of workplaces. And, nudge, nudge. I mean, I'm not sure if I would take extreme measures or anything, but in one notorious story, he invited them to a great feast and locked them in the building and burned it down. I'm not sure I'd want to do that. How about just, is that where it comes from? You're fired? Too soon? Yeah. That's the definition of being fired for being unproductive. You're fired. Diplomatic consequences. Vlad's harshness was also on display in his foreign relations, when Ottoman envoys refused to remove their turbans in his presence. He had the headwear nailed to their heads. Anyhow, warfare tactics. Yep, here's the big one. Big one, and we're going to get deeper into this in a little bit. Oh boy, here we go. Warfare tactics. Vlad's cruelty extended to his military strategies. Oh, that's for sure. It goes wider than anything else. In 1462, during an invasion by the Ottoman Army Empire, Vlad lined the road to his capital with a forest of the impaled. Forest of the impaled, also known as the Forest of Blood. An estimated 20,000 impaled victims. I'll say that again. An estimated 20,000 impaled victims. The gruesome sight successfully demoralized the invading forces and drove them to retreat. That'd be a man named Mohammed back at the time. Yeah, they're just like, okay, that's it. I'm done. Forget it. I can't deal with this. Could you imagine seeing that? Could you imagine the stench? I just get you get the shivers, you get goosebumps even thinking about it. And talk is that oftentimes when these type of things were taking place, people were being impaled, which is often on like stakes, like big. That's where the wood stake stuff comes from, by the way, and the whole Castlevania, Dracula, this and that. The wooden stake, drive the wooden stake in, that kind of stuff. Trees. They use trees. Like they'd have it kind of turned into like a stake. You kind of make it sharp on the top, and then they stuck it through the person's. They stuck it through their. Basically through their anus and went through their body and maybe out their mouth or something. I hope you're not eating when I talk about this, because what's really creepy about this? Maybe the creepiest thing of all? What oftentimes was Vlad Impaler known for when this kind of stuff was happening? He would merely sit down at a table outside watching and would eat. To basically show like this is nothing. It's nothing. I'm just kind of having my meal here, watching human beings, men, women, children, all the above, impaled on giant stakes. That were like trees, basically. Yeah, trees in a forest of blood type of thing. It's wonderful, isn't it? Who's worse, The one that turned into bats. Well, you know what? At the end of the day, play the Castlevania games, especially Symphony of the Night is when you really see a lot of detail, but you'll see it in Castlevania 3, Castlevania 2, and even Castlevania 1. You'll often see skeletons impaled on like spear type things. It's usually not trees, but like spears, and I'm sure they use those as well. Yep, or it'd be like, those sharp tipped fence type things. That's almost where that idea comes from, I swear. You'll often see skeletons, like impaled skeletons. Yeah, in those games, and it's like, well, yeah, that's accurate to history of Vlad the Impaler. So it often is in there, especially in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, because that game will add a bit more detail oftentimes to things like that. And it's crazy stuff. When you're kind of semi-outside, you'll see a bit of that outside all over the place. Yeah, but, well, back to the laws a bit, but that was the ultimate thing. Well, Vlad's strictness brought a form of stability to Wallachia. His methods were a spectacle of terror designed to maintain absolute obedience. Yep. Well, you'd certainly get it, wouldn't you? Vlad's reputation for unflinching, brutal justice is just appreciated. It's still appreciated by some in Roman popular memory. Romanian, I don't know what's wrong with me. But it horrified his enemies and served as the inspiration for fictional vampire Dracula. Exactly. Yep, and that's where the name Dracul came from, his father. And then, well, that's Dracula. There was Dracul, Vlad Dracul, and then there was Dracula, Vlad Tepes. Interesting stuff, isn't it? Forest of Blood, you ready? You ready for the Forest of Blood? Ready? Okay, we'll continue. The Forest of Blood, or Forest of the Impaled, is a grim episode of from 1642. It's a podcast or a video. You can watch it Okay, just kidding. Especially from 1452, but attributed to Vlad the Impaler, Vlad III of Wallachia, to repel a massive Ottoman invasion. Vlad reportedly impaled tens of thousands of his enemies on stakes outside his capital city. It gets so much easier, doesn't it? Targo Viste. The gruesome scene, and it's like the Transylvania region, by the way. The gruesome scene was a powerful form of psychological warfare. Well, he certainly accomplished that, didn't he? He certainly hit the nail on the head, and did that at times when people wouldn't take their turbans off, too. He hit the nail on the head. So, is that where that came from? Well, something like that. Anyhow, the Ottoman invasion, yep, we're going to recount this again. In 1462, Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II led an army into Wallachia to conquer the principality and unseat Vlad, who had refused to pay tribute, just like in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. He wanted, Vlad or Dracula wanted people to pay him tribute. I don't know why I'm laughing, but Vlad had refused to pay them tribute and had been attacking Ottoman territories. And it's like it was a back and forth, on and off thing. Like, weren't they kind of semi-friends? Didn't he take refuge over there? But again, further proof, refugees don't always appreciate the place that they hold refuge in. Yeah, nudge, nudge. We'll get to that maybe on freedom of thought or something. Vlad's scorched earth policy, yep. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Knowing he was heavily outnumbered, yep, he was heavily outnumbered. It was approximately 150,000 soldiers, by the way, coming with Sultan Mehmed II. They were going to finish the job. Like, it's going to be over. It's over, Vlad. You're done. You're done. But knowing that Vlad was heavily outnumbered, Vlad retreated and employed scorched earth tactics. He poisoned wells and destroyed villages to deny the Ottoman army supplies as they advanced. The Forest of the Impaled, yep, here we go again. And it happened more than once, too, by the way. This is just one time. As Mehmed II's forces approached Targo Viste, they were met by a horrific spectacle, a forest of an estimated 20,000 impaled Turkish prisoners, soldiers, and civilians. The victims were arranged on stakes, creating a ghastly landscape of suffering and death. The Sultan retreated. The immense scale of carnage reportedly shocked and demoralized Sultan Mehmed II and his veteran army. Although the Ottomans were vastly superior in numbers, the psychological impact of the sight, along with Vlad's other guerrilla tactics like the poisoning and such, caused Mehmed to turn back and abandon the campaign. Like, all right, that's it, we're done. It's crazy stuff. Absolutely crazy stuff. Other comments like the myth or exaggeration and such. While the forest of the impaled was a real and effective tactic, the stories surrounding it spread and were embellished over time, particularly Vlad's German and Hungarian rivals. Interesting. Tales of Vlad's cruelty were printed and distributed throughout Europe as propaganda, exaggerating his brutality to demoralize him, or to demonize him. Some of these pamphlets alleged that he dined among the impaled bodies. Yes, yes. That may not be true. It might be debunked that he did that, but it sounds like somebody that would do that, though, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound like somebody that would do stuff like that? Some historians suggest that the number of victims was inflated by these hostile accounts, though the event itself is corroborated by multiple historical sources, including Ottoman chronicles. Regardless of the exact figures, the psychological impact of the spectacle of the Ottoman forces is well documented, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it is. I swear there were more, because I remember reading more and more about this in the past. That there was yes, here it is. Yep, obviously that's the large army, so I'm looking at it backwards here. There were times, I swear, thought was that, because obviously numbers of people were impaled for different reasons over the course of time, that the numbers could have gotten into the hundreds of thousands total throughout the off and on reigns of Vlad Tepes, or Vlad the Third. So it could have ranged up into the hundreds of thousands range, like 100,000 is probably not 200,000, I would hope. But those poor souls, those poor people were absolutely, it's insane, like what a horrible way to go, to say the least. Yep, used impalement as a form of psychological warfare to instill fear in his enemies. Yep. Within his own principality, Vlad used his own brutal reputation to deter both nobles like the boyars and common criminals from opposing his rule. Some historians suggest Vlad's intense hatred for the Ottomans stemmed from his childhood captivity. Yeah, that's what it is, because he was a captive under their control, and the murder of his father and brother at the hands of the Ottoman-backed boyars. So, yes, it makes sense. He may have taken refuge, but it wasn't necessarily a good place. He was more of a prisoner at the time. So, yeah, I mean, it's it's believable. It's semi-understandable, but maybe you went a little too far, Vlad. You went a little too far, didn't you? Whew, man, frightening stuff. Frightening to say the least. The name Dracula, which is now primarily known as the name of a vampire, was for centuries known as the sobriquet of Vlad the III. Diplomatic reports and popular stories refer to him as Dracula. And then you have Dracuglia, or Dracula, already in the 15th century. Yep. He himself signed his two letters as Dracula, so it's like that, Dracula, or Dracula, in the late 1470s. Well, it sounds like the correct accent, Dracula. His name and its origin in the sobriquet of his father, Vlad Dracul. Vlad the Dragon, interesting, in medieval Romanian. Interesting, Vlad the Dragon, huh? Who received it after he became a member of the Order of the Dragon. What's going on? Order of the Dragon. Dracula is the Slavic genitive form of Dracul, meaning the son of Dracul. See, there it is. The son of Dracul. Or of the dragon. Dracula of the Dragon. In modern Romanian, Dracul means the devil, which contributed to Vlad's reputation. My goodness. It's like so obvious, isn't it? Vlad III is known as Vlad Tepes, or Vlad the Impaler, in Roman historiography. This sobriquet is connected to the impalement that was his favorite method of execution. Sure was. The Ottoman writer Tursun Beg referred to him as, and these names just get easier and easier, Kaziki, Voivoda Impaler Lord, around 1500. That would be after his death, of course. Yeah, it was like historical writing and such. Mircea the Shepherd, okay, Voivode of Wallachia, used his sobriquet when referring to Vlad III in a letter of grant on April 1st, 1551. Well, April Fools to you, my friend. Yeah, interesting and crazy stuff. Yeah, Vlad II Dracula. So again, that's where that name came from. In the early 1400s. Man, lots of back and forth. Obviously in exile. Yep. The murders and such. Yeah, it's, boy, detailed stuff. Transylvanian Saxons. Yep. It's fascinating. And I think we can delve deeper into this in possible maybe future episodes. If we'd like, maybe future, like around this time of year. But, yeah, what do you think? Sounds like a good guy, doesn't he? Sounds like a pretty intense story, to say the least. Vlad Dracula. Vlad Dracula II, but then Count Dracula. I don't even know where the Count comes from, but I suppose that's a version of Count. All these different leadership positions is, I guess, what they came up with over the course of time. Because either way, he was a leader, he was a conqueror. It all kind of goes together with, dare we say, the fiction side, be it a cute little story, well, which is never cute to say the least. In the, obviously you got Dracula, the movies and such, complicated, all different stories there. And of course, again, the Castlevania series on the NES up to the PlayStation 1. Never got into the N64. I played it for a tiny bit. It's terrible. If you want my opinion on the Castlevania series, I think they should always have been side-scroll platformers. Seem to work better. Just not a 3D guy. And when you're so used to playing a certain type of game as a side-scroll platformer versus 3D style, gotta stick with the side-scroll. I mean, you just get used to it. You grow up with it. Frankly, it just feels better, generally speaking, and you can have beautiful artwork in the background rather than have to make everything like almost like kind of semi-human like, but computer generated human. It just doesn't interest me that much at the end of the day. So yes, this branch is all over the place. You even have cute characters like the Count in the the Count in the Muppets. Cute character, obviously. How he's always counting and doing math and such. 1, 2, 3. So it's funny. You can go from cute characters to, what he really was. Quite the intense, harsh leader, to say the least. Some leader he is, right? Oh, boy. Well, you think your manager at work is strict? Think again. This guy, if you weren't productive, would literally be like, you're fired. And I get a feeling that's where that came from, I swear. They don't mention it here, but it sounds like the definition of being fired. Being locked in a building and burned down. Are you kidding me? You unproductive people. We're going to lock you up in a building and burn it down with you inside. Ouch. Yeah, I'd rather take a pink slip any day versus that. And taking a pink slip is scary, devastating. I can only imagine for some people how horrible that feeling is. Others don't even care because they weren't productive and don't even try anyway. So nobody feels bad about them at all. But others that were productive and are being unfairly treated, well, that's terrible. But at least you didn't get. But I guess if you feel you're being treated unfairly, think about what this guy did. Think about what this guy did. Like, you accidentally, this person accidentally gave me 1 coin too many. They almost were put to death for it. Almost. He gave the coin back. Oof, think about it. Because if he didn't, well, it would be a very bad day. Very painful day. And there wouldn't be a day after that. Unfortunately, that would be your last day, at least on this earth. Pray to God. Get right with God. You'll have a much better future that way. But at least for the time being, you're going to be going through literally hell on earth with Vlad Tepes in charge, one way or the other. I think we can delve deeper in future episodes, possibly over the course of time. But this is to kind of give you a general idea right here, this time of year, who the real Vlad the Impaler was. Vlad Tepes really was the real Dracula, the real one. And sounds a lot scarier than the person, even in the video games, and how harsh he could be. to say the least. But it also does explain why in Castlevania Symphony of the Night there's several instances where there's like a bajillion skulls and bodies everywhere in the game. That tells you why. Like, so there is some realisticness to that one versus just kind of like, here's this guy and this, this outfit and, he turns into bats or whatever. So, and like all like romance or whatever with his wife or whatever, that type of thing, Lisa, and how she was unfairly treated, and then he was angry and wanted to destroy the human race, basically, like Dracula in the Castlevania series. Whereas in this case, obviously, it did involve murders, but where Vlad's was kind of similar in a lot of ways, where obviously his harsh treatment of regular people, his own people, and then of course the ultra harsh treatment of the Ottomans who had wronged him much earlier in his life and had killed a family member. So very unfortunate in so many ways. Kind of a Hitler-like person. In fact, in a lot of ways, I would say he was very Hitlerian, to say the least. Like, that's what a fascist is right there. That's a fascist. The definition of one at the end of the day. So, with all of that said, we're going to step away for now. Wish you you could say, I'll say Happy Halloween. Even though, again, I'm not a huge celebrator of it. I'm not going to put skeletons on the walls and have werewolves howling in the background. That's not really my cup of tea at the end of the day. More of a Christmas guy, more of a Thanksgiving guy. But the festive side, the historic side of some of these people, that like the real side, the real history of this figure that is such a huge part of monster movies and such. It's fascinating stuff, to say the least. Pretty fancy and interesting looking attire as well on this man in this painting, this famous painting from the mid 1500s. We call that the 16th century, but he lived in the 15th century at the end of the day, all in the 1400s, way back. Like Castlevania 3 basically is about around that time. Was the appropriate time, I'd say, in the timeline of the Castlevania series. Because Castlevania 3 is a prequel. So, way back in the day. With all that said, again, thank you so much. Happy Halloween if you celebrate it. Otherwise, get ready for Thanksgiving. We're going to have some conversation about that coming up later on. And we'll try to have some other episodes in between as well, if mostly possible. So, with that said, thank you so much for listening. Tell your friends about the show. Spread it around. And don't be stealing apples, and don't accidentally take one extra coin from somebody that accidentally gave it to you, because bad things might happen, especially if you're in Transylvania. Be careful, my friends. Be careful. With that said, take care and join me on the next adventure.